some fantastic lessons that you are learning in the last 2 days. What a fantastic faculty you had, and great topics that were given uh, by them to all of you. So, today we are going to talk about leadership essentials. And by and large, I have taken this entire content from my association with John Maxwell. So, John Maxwell is the one who is one of the number one leadership guru in the world for the last now not 7, 8 years consecutively. Also, he has written 70 plus books and sold 19 million copies of that. So I've been associated with John Maxwell for the last 7 years. I'm being mentored by him, and most of the content that you see here has been curated and customized for Indian audiences. So that's what we are going to do. So just giving you the pedigree of the content that we are going to talk about today. So what are the learning objectives? What do we really hope to achieve at the end of these 2 hours? Firstly, we hope to achieve an understanding of leadership, which I know you already would have, but maybe go slightly more deeper into it. And also see whether there's a change that has taken place or has happened vis-a-vis the leadership of the 20th century. So while the 20th century needed a certain kind of leadership, we believe there is a major change that has happened in the 21st century, which has possibly redefined, or there's a need to redefine leadership. So that's what we are going to talk about. We are also going to talk about the three myths of leadership. Certain elements of leadership which people believe, but which may have changed over the years. And unless we really don't understand these myths of leadership, which by and large people do believe in, we will actually not being able to move to the next step of leadership. So we'll be kind of going through it and seeing if these are the myths, what is the current reality all about? The third thing that we are going to talk about is attitude. And in leadership, or I would even say in life, the foundation of everything is the attitude by which you do a certain thing. Like somebody said, and said this so beautifully, two people may do the same thing. One may be 100% right, the second may be 100% wrong. Now that depends on the attitude of the person and the motive of the person. So attitude is actually foundational. Without the right attitude, I may for a time being have some successes, but if the attitude is not right, my successes will certainly not be sustainable. So with these three things, we are also going to look at three critical leadership social skills. See, there is no leader if there is no follower. There is no leader if he doesn't have people to lead. And that is why he may have certain personal skills, but these personal skills and attitude is really a personal skill. This then needs to also get into interaction with people, because a leader's main job is to influence and inspire people towards a common good. So what are the three critical leadership skills? We're going to kind of talk about that and get certain understanding on this. So since this is just a 2 hour session, I thought we would cover these basic 4 items. So where are we in leadership today? Why is it there is a need? Why is it there a need for us to even talk about leadership? Hasn't it been talked enough? Haven't people been leaders and we know they are leaders all around? So why is there a need to still talk about leadership? The reason is very clear that despite 65,000 books on leadership being written and billions being spent on leadership programs, the reality is that majority of people trust a stranger more than their boss. So really speaking, while we've been talking a lot about leadership, and all of us by and large have a great understanding of the what of leadership, we really haven't been practicing it in a manner that we should be practicing it. Another research showed that 50% of the people would fire their bosses if they could. In fact, when I show this slide in workshops, A lot of people put up their hand and say, Pawan, I don't agree with this percentage. I say, why? Should it be less? They say, no, it should be 90%. So possibly that is what we are going to talk about. Leadership, while it's being talked about and taught over the last number of decades, we still need more and more leaders and better leaders. In case you look around India itself, what we find that is lacking across all forms of public life, corporate life, social life is lack of leadership. So that is the need. That is the reason why we all must take this seriously, because this is going to make or break our country as it is, and this is going to make and break any organization. And I would say, whether you show leadership or not, you will be successful or not successful in your own life. So let's, after having understood this, let's go to the next to say, why is it that leadership is so bad as of now? Why is it that we don't have leaders at every street of India? And the reason is very simple. That leadership, as defined in most of the books, is about an individual capacity to lead a group of people or an organization to achieve a common goal. So this is what we have been taught, that leadership is all about one individual having all the knowledge that there is, having all the charisma that there is, having all the influence that there is to take a lot of people behind it. However, the unfortunate part is that in today's VUCA world, what is VUCA? Volatile. What is VUCA, anybody? Uncertain. What is C? Complex and ambiguous world, where changes are taking place faster and faster. Hasn't coronavirus told us that? We are into this world where challenges are complex, interdependent, and urgent. And that is why we need to, is somebody presenting other than me? That is why the paradigm of change, a paradigm of our thought process about leadership has to change. And the new paradigm, the new lens through which you should be seeing leadership is, the future of leadership is collective. What do we mean by that? Collective leadership is the capacity of the collective, of a group, to achieve results in support of organization goals. See, the fortunate part or the unfortunate part of life is that today no person will have all the knowledge that is there required by him alone to find answers to the complex problems that we are facing today. And you find this in your own team. Isn't it a fact of life that there are certain people who are better than you in certain areas of work? And that is why collective leadership, where we tap into the expertise and leadership qualities of everybody in the team, will only then enable us to get answers to the challenges that we are facing. So it's not about the individual any longer, it's about the collective. That is why we need leaders at every level of the organization. Earlier leadership was only top management, CEO, head of departments, they need to show leadership. Today, the times have changed. Every single person, be it the most frontline person in your organization, needs to show leadership. And if you reflect on this, that there are a lot of people we see who do not have the designation, but they still show a tremendous amount of proactivity. And proactivity is the hallmark of leadership. So with this understanding that leadership is not for a few, but it is for all of us, irrespective of the role, position, and designation that we are, and it is all encompassing in this world today. Let's take a further step to find out what do we need to understand beyond this. Now, this is a very fundamental slide, and I'd like you to just ponder over it for around 10 seconds. See, all of us have got something known as a mental map. Our mental map is created in our brain. Our mental map is based on the experiences that we had where was I born, where did I go for school, how did my mother treat me, how the kinds of friends that I had, the kind of opportunities I had, the kind of disasters I had. So all the experiences that I've had in my life all get consolidated and compiled in my head, forming a mental map. Now, whenever there's an external event that takes place, my brain quickly starts to make a connection between my past experience and the situation that has unfolded in front of me. And the brain loves making connections because if it can't make connections to its past, to its experiences, it will get lost. It will get threatened. So, with whatever best it can make a connection to, the present situation is seen from a past experiences. And while at times that may be relevant, many a times it is not relevant to the situation because my past is so different to the realities of that present situation today. So none of us, and that's a fact of life, none of us see the world as it is. We never see a situation holistically. You see this in a meeting. Somebody is from, let's say, the administrative department. Somebody is from the teaching faculty. Somebody is from some other faculty. Each one of them are looking at the same problem, but each one is talking differently. So we must realize that we are all limited. And unless I do not tap into the experiences and the perceptions of different people, I will never be able to see the situation holistically. And I will not be able to tap into the collective experience of the team. And if I don't tap into that collective experience of the team, I will not be able to take collective leadership to the stage that it should be. In fact, I do a little exercise when I do these live trainings or when I do a longer training. And what I would do is I would show up, I would say, okay, gentlemen, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, write down 5 things that come to your mind when I say the word money. So write down 5 things that come to your mind when I say the word money. So people write it down and it's an individual exercise. Having done this individual exercise, I put them into groups of 5 and ask them to compile all the words that have been commonly selected by all 5 people. That means what are the common words all 5 of you have written in your sheet of paper where you have put 5 things that you connect with money. And let me tell you, the answer every time is 0. No 5 people have connected with something as mundane and as common as money in the same way. So this gives us a big aha to say every one of us thinks differently, and that is a great source of strength. So earlier when I was got into teaching line, anybody who told me that I don't agree with you, I would try my hardest to make him believe that I am right, you are wrong. Now when somebody says, Pawan, I don't believe you, I say, hey man, I love it. Come, let me give you a hug because you're going to teach me something that I don't know. And if we are opening ourselves to these experiences, every one of us in our lifetime, through experiences of others, are going to learn much more. Because whatever we say, our own experiences are going to be extremely limited vis-a-vis the experiences of a group. So the first understanding, each one of us, for collective leadership to really work, is that we need to tap into our team and see different perceptions and not go with the mindset to say, my idea, my way or the highway. Rather saying, your way, your way, your way, your way, and my way together forms a higher way. Because every time you tap into the collective intelligence of a group, 100% you will come to ideas which will be better than you having thought of it alone. So that's one mindset you need to have. And I love this saying to say, I have my slice of truth. You have your slice of truth. When I add your slice of truth to my slice of truth, my slice of truth becomes large. So this is a deeper belief and mindset. Every leader of the present and the future must believe in, and if they don't, they must change their belief to say, I know best. That has to change to say, a collective will always know better than an individual. And that is why we cannot accomplish all that we need to do without working together. So 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. So this is synergy, right? 1 plus 1 is equal to 10. 1 plus 1 is equal to 100. Now, when somebody showed this, I said, man, how is this? Mathematically, it doesn't make sense. How can 1 plus 1 be equal to 3? I have one idea, you have one idea, we have two ideas now. How have they come to three ideas? Then somebody taught me and told me, your idea and my idea together will form a third idea. So 1 plus 1 plus third, which is better than your idea and my idea alone. So a combination of these two ideas automatically will give us a third idea which is better than either of that, and that is how the third number comes in. So this mindset change is the first mindset every leader must open himself up to. And before we even started this talk, I was having a chat and somebody said, Pawan, people don't agree to others, and the reason is ego. Right? So we as leaders, and we do a program which is known as Leading Beyond the Ego. Because leaders need to go beyond their ego to say, I know everything best. So that's the first point I like to talk about. So what is leadership? Leadership is the capacity of the collective to work together to achieve an organizational objective. It's not about the individual. What is leadership? Leadership is accepting the fact that I don't know the best. And the more I tap into people and get those people involved in ideation, and then get into execution with this ideation, we will always be better to be able to get a better solution. Now coming to the three myths of leadership. So I will just wait for a minute. Anybody has any questions, they can unmute themselves and ask me. So if somebody could give.
No, sir. One person has raised the hand.
Okay.
You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Great, great. So if there are no other questions or no other comments that we have, let's go to the three myths of leadership. First myth of leadership is leadership and management are mutually exclusive. I've heard this so often in my corporate life. As people became senior, leaders in the organization would use a sentence and they would say, stop being a manager, start being a leader. You don't have to be a manager at all. Leadership is what you need to show in the position that you are in. So there's a twist to this. And is this true that we are either a leader or a manager, or are they more connected and complementary or not? So the first myth is leadership and management, or a leader or a manager, are completely exclusive. They have no connection or no common ground amongst them. Either you be a leader or you become a manager, depending on the position that you have. So that's the management myth. The second is the knowledge myth. And in the 20th century, knowledge was power. Today, unfortunately, knowledge is so much that no one person can have the entire knowledge, but we believe, or the myth goes to say, a leader is the most intelligent person in the group. The third myth that we like to reflect on, and the myth is you need to have a title to show leadership. You need to be a VP, you need to be a senior VP, you need to be a director, you need to be head of faculty, you need to be a registrar. Unless you don't have a title, you cannot show leadership in your position. And if you do it, God help you, the wrath of God will come on you. So these are the three myths that we have. So if this is a myth, all three are myths, what is the reality? So let's go to the first one, the management myth. Anybody would like to comment? Are leaders and managers different breeds, or is there a combination of that that is required for us to be successful? So anybody can unmute yourself, give your point of view, and why do you think it is what it is? Anybody? That I work with who are into, I support them in execution. So when I meet the senior most leaders and I tell them, okay, what do you think is the biggest role that you have? They say, our role is to create the vision. Our role is to create the strategy. Our role is to think about the future. Our thought is about change. I say, okay, great. And I said, are you needing to do something in execution of getting results? Is there a role that you have to play? And a number of times they said, no, I have no role to play in execution. Right? But that is actually a false thought. If the senior management, senior leadership is not involved in execution and getting the results that are required, then they are limiting their own inputs to the organization. So, okay, so before we understand this, let us see there are 8 things that I've given here. Some of them come under the gambit of leadership, some come under management. So let's see which is leadership and which is management. So seeks order, leader or manager? Seeks order, seeks processes, puts things into place. Manager or leader, anybody?
Sir, seeks order is manager.
Great, fantastic. Sets vision and direction.
Leader.
Leader, yes. So the person who just said exactly right. Innovates.
Leaders.
Leader. He's always trying to find something better. He doesn't believe in that fact that if it aren't broke, you don't need to improve it. No. He said no. Even if it's not broke, I'm always thinking of how I can make the changes that are required of it. Optimizes within narrow constraints. Manager or leader?
Leader.
Optimizes only within a constraint. So he's not thinking, innovating. He's just keeping his mind very clear. So it's actually a manager. Takes risk. Leader or manager? Leader. Manages risk, becomes a manager, right? Okay. Uses control to get things done. Manager, great.
Manager.
Absolutely. Relishes change. Oh, I love change. Obviously a leader, right? Because if he's taking risk, if he's innovating, he's relishing it. And structures the team and organizes it is
Leader.
Manager. Because he just structures the team, organizes it. So tell me one thing. Can a person only get involved or needs to get involved in any one of them and not the other? Or is there both things required at every place? So what we believe is that manager and leadership is complementing each other. We both need managers and we both need leaders in an organization. In fact, every person must have a sense of leadership within his job and a sense of manager also in his job. In fact, and you can write this down, 3 things that I talk about, these 3 sentences, which make it very clear. Management is all about, write it down. Management is all about getting results today. Management is all about getting results today. Leadership is all about building capacity and capability to get results in the future. Building capacity and capability to get results in the future. So management is all about today, this year, let me get results. But building capacity for the future. Because if I only keep working on doing what I'm supposed to do with a near-term focus, and I'm not building my capacity for the future of what is changing, I may be relevant in the short term, but I may become irrelevant in the long term. On the other hand, if I'm only thinking about next 3 years forward and doing nothing for today, will I get results? I won't get results. So what has become? I become relevant today itself. So management is all about getting results today. Leadership is all about building capability and capacity for the future. If you are not a good leader, you will become irrelevant in the future. But if you are not good manager, you will become irrelevant today. So in our lives, we need to do both. We need to get results while we also need to build our own capability and the people around us, their capability, so that we are future proof, future ready. That is why leadership and management both complement each other. Having only one of that doesn't give us the desired results that we want. So managers work for short-term results, leaders work for long-term sustainability of results. So that's the first myth that we have put aside. So I will always do something about as a manager, but I will also do something about leadership in my day-to-day work. Knowledge myth. Knowledge is power. A leader is the most intelligent person in the group. In this complicated world, it can never happen. It is not about IQ, but more about emotional intelligence. We saw this slide earlier. 20% of our success is based on IQ, 80% on emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. As you grow higher, you will have people under you who will be experts in certain area that you are not an expert in. So what do you need to do? You need to use emotional intelligence and social skills to engage them, to talk to them, to listen to them, to empathize with them, to manage conflicts with them. Because unless you are not good at your emotional skills, or I even call them social skills, you will not be able to take a team together. Do you know of some people, and I do, who have been fantastic from an individual point of view, but put them in a team and they don't work well? Now, these people will always be or will have it more difficult to realize their potential because they are not team players. So it is not the most intelligent person, it's the most socially intelligent person, emotionally intelligent person who is actually a leader in the group, and that is what we must try to work on. The third is you need to have a title to show leadership. Each one of us, irrespective of the position that we are in, have an opportunity to show leadership, because leadership is nothing but accountability. Leadership is nothing but proactivity. So all change does not happen from the top. Each one of us, within the area that we are in, we must be proactive and we must hold ourselves accountable. And that is going to ensure that every one of us actually, and Robin Sharma says that when we do his workshop, he calls his program known as Leader Without a Title. So lead without a title is something that every single person in the organization must do, because if everybody doesn't lead, then that collective leadership will not come into play. Do we know of some person who possibly gives us the tea? But while he gives us tea, he remembers who likes what at what time. Now this person is also a leader within his area of work, because he is being proactive, he is holding himself accountable, he is going beyond what is expected out of him. So the third reality is each one of us is a leader. Leadership is not about titles, not about positions or a flow chart. It is about influencing each other's life, and every one of us, wherever we are, will influence, even if we like it or not, either positively or negatively, people around us. Like later, John Maxwell also says this: leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Because if I'm not influencing, if I cannot influence people to follow the vision that I'm painting for them, then I'm not a leader, I'm a follower. So these three myths is something that we went to. Any questions on this myth or any add-on points that you want to add on in this myth? Any comments anybody has?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I was thinking more leadership is more about taking responsibility not only for one's actions but also for actions of people around us, and being accountable for the actions.
Right.
Whereas manager has a very limited purview.
Right.
So earlier you were mentioning that the manager is completely different from the leader, but I would think that the manager would be a subset of a leader.
Absolutely. So that we said that things that I believe every leader must have, and you can write this down: courage, discipline, and humility. There are three things required for change also: courage, humility, and discipline. Firstly, courage to accept the fact that I'm not all good. Right? That it takes courage to say I need improvement, right? Then and with that is connected humility, accepting the fact, oh yes, I agree with it, that I'm not all powerful. And then having decided on that, then moving to discipline to actually act this out. So change requires these three things. A leader also requires humility to agree to the fact that he needs to take charge. He also requires courage and discipline. Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. So this is the power of collective thinking, right? Each one of us is giving value adds to this entire interaction that we are having. So this is not a program or so this is where the power comes in. Anybody else? Because anything that you say is going to only add to this. Anyone else?
How do goals help you to become a better leader?
How do goals help you to become a better leader? See, you need two things. Firstly, you need a vision. Vision is the long-term goal. This is where I want to be. Second is having a vision but not a goal does not put you in a state of urgency. So what do goals actually give you? It gives you a state of urgency. Because unfortunately, human beings, they focus on the urgent and not the important. Because anything that comes to us as an urgent thing, we tend to immediately look at it, and something which is long term, we tend to kind of put it in the back burner to say, once I focus on this and get this done, then I will think of the long term. So the first thing you need even before a goal is a vision. This is the direction I want to go in. Now, after you have created a direction where you want to go, then you create a 5-year goal. Then you create a 1-year goal. Then you create a 6-month goal. Then you create a 3-month goal. Then you create a monthly goal. And why is it important? You can write down this fantastic statement, which says, further the goal, lesser the motivation to achieve it. Further the goal, lesser the motivation to achieve it. So what do? If I have a 1-year goal, by December 2021, I'll become healthier. And healthier for me is lose 5 kgs of weight. Now what do I do in January of 2021? Oh yeah, December. Kar lenge yaar. Not problem, no problem. 5 kg na. I'll do it. So you tend to keep postponing it. But the moment you say 1 kg is a goal that I want to kind of get, when do I want to get it? After a month, end of this month. Now you have created an urgency for yourself. And that is why leaders need to create goals, not only yearly goals, but quarterly goals and monthly goals. What happens then? Once you have created a monthly goal, what are you doing? You are then checking after that month, planned versus actual. So it may so happen you did everything that you thought was required, but it didn't work. Now you have a chance to make the adjustments and try something new because this hasn't worked for you. And that is why goal setting is very, very important for most people. There are some beautiful things about goal setting.
Yes.
I could talk about, but then it will take a lot of time. Okay, goal setting, fundamentally, as I said, to create urgency in your life, to ensure that you can measure what you have, because what you measure is what you achieve, as simple as that. So that's the connection between leaders and goal setting. But one thing that we don't do in goal setting, we don't create team goals. Everybody's got KRA, KPI, everybody's got his individual task, but nobody knows what the team has to achieve. If you are a part of a team, I promise you today, write it down right now. What do you want this team to achieve by December 2021? Just write it down somewhere. You have a team, you want your team to achieve something, write it down. December 2021, this is what we'll achieve. Now pick up the phone and ask 5 people of your team members, what do you think the team goal will be for December 2021? Everyone will be talking differently. How can you even begin achieving things? And how can you have collaboration within teams if the teams do not even know what the team goals are? This is the biggest lacuna of most organizations. So when we work on execution excellence and we consult organizations on that, the first thing that we do is we create the company's 3 goals, which normally are there. Then we call the next departmental heads and say, and I've even done this with the university. Then we get the departmental heads and we ask the departmental heads, if this is the university's 3 goals, what are your 3 goals of your department which will help this the university achieve its 3 goals? So all departments then break down their work into 3 goals, which will support that larger goal achievement. Then these departmental heads go down to their next teams and they tell each team, now this is my department goal. What can your team do? What can your faculty do for achievement of this? And every faculty or team takes 3 goals and we'd go down to the last team. Now imagine the power of compounding. You have 3 goals here, which have been broken down to maybe 150 goals in the organization. Every team has got its goal identified for 1 year. That goal has been broken down for every month. The team measures itself on a monthly basis, whether they have achieved a goal or not, and what do they need to do differently next month to achieve it. 150 measurements of goals taking place, team after team after team after team. Don't you think it will be so much easier for the university or the company to achieve its 3 goals? So not only individual goals, team goals are the crux of achievement, especially in organizations, which 90% of the organizations never do. And they keep wondering after that, what went wrong? So that's the connection between goal setting and leadership. Okay, great. Let's go to attitude is the main thing. And just also keep slightly aware of the time that we are in. Any other question somebody has? We can take a couple of minutes more on this. Okay, let's go to attitude is the main thing. All things being equal, attitude wins. All things not being equal, attitude sometimes still wins. So what is it that we are really looking for when we are having an interview of somebody that we want to take on board? Firstly, all the requirements that are required technically and educationally are already checked before the person even comes to us. You're only trying to find out whether what he's written is something that he has done by asking them questions. And through the questions, you're also identifying the attitude of a person. And every time a person who's got more positive attitude, who's a team player, who believes in being proactive, people like them will always do better than anybody else. So attitude is a very major part of life. And people may hear your words, but they feel your attitude. The attitude that I have is demonstrated by my behaviors. So attitude is an inward feeling expressed by a behavior. How do you know somebody is egoistic? because his behavior, the words that he uses, the facial expression that he puts in, the body language of putting people aside, clearly indicate that the person inwardly feels he is superior to others. If somebody has lack of self-confidence and feels inferior, again, his behavior is the one that kind of shows what he is feeling inside. So that is why attitude can be seen without a word being said, meaning his behavior, my behavior clearly indicates my attitude to people around him. And please remember this, people are watching you even when you think they are not. Right? So every single thing that you do as a behavior is being noticed by people. Your attitude internally, inward, because it's all inside you, right? Attitude comes from your past experiences, past memories, past beliefs. All these beliefs get then demonstrated by behaviors. So I love these 5 sentences about attitude. Its roots are inward, but its fruits are outward. The belief is inside me, but my behaviors are something that people will see. It dash people to us or dash them. It repels people or it draws people to us or repels them. Aren't there some people in your life whom you meet and every time you meet them, you say, my God, every time I meet the person, I just don't want to be in his presence. He gives me so much of negativity. So your attitude will either get people liking you, wanting to come and talk to you, or they will move these people away from you. It is a librarian of our past. Because if I have had a bad interaction with somebody in the past, that past makes my attitude of the present, and my present behavior is based on the past interaction I've had with that person. And because of it, the dash of a present, the speaker of a present, my past experiences make me who I am, and what I do today, the dash of a future, the profit of a future. So as I behave, we saw that diagram last time, the iceberg model. Iceberg model says results are dependent on our behavior. So behaviors drive results. What drives behaviors? Emotions. That comes from the past experiences that we have. What drives emotions are feelings. So all of them are from the past experiences. So attitude impacts us both, or is connected both with our past, our present, and our future. So attitude is something which is below the iceberg, the mindset. It is in your conscious, subconscious, or unconscious. And that is where we have found at times, when we do a 360-degree assessment, people get to know some behaviors that they are demonstrating, which unknowingly they are demonstrating based on their attitude, which is being impacted by their past experiences and their past fears and their lack of self-esteem or beliefs. Now, this is a very, very interesting diagram. It says our attitude determines our behavior, that we know. But let us imagine that I believe, that's my belief, right? That people are not good. My belief is if you don't check and you don't shout at people, they will not work because people are not sincere. That's my belief. And I believe I need to keep pushing people to get the work done. If that is my attitude, what will be my behavior? I will micromanage. I will lose my temper. I'll find faults. I will always push people. I will tell them what to do without asking them what needs to be done or asking them their point of view. If that is my behavior, do you think people will be more engaged or disengaged? More disengaged, right? And what will we tell ourselves? See, I told you, people aren't good. On the other hand, if my attitude is that every human being is largely wanting to do a good job, every human being wants to earn his money sincerely, every human being wants to be a success in life, if that is what my attitude is, what is my behavior with people? More empathetic, more collaborative, more supportive. And when I do this with people, will people become more disengaged or engaged? Engaged. And what will I tell myself? See, I told you, no, people are good. So that's the beauty of life, is whatever my attitude is, based on that my behaviors get impacted, based on which my results get impacted, and they further harden my views about life. That is why first change that needs to happen is an attitudinal change, which will lead to a behavioral change, and that will change our results, and based on that our attitudes will change. So attitude is all about acting out a new belief. Now, one of the most important attitude, we call it the law of the mirror, is an attitude of self-confidence. Leaders, specifically from a leadership context, if a leader does not have confidence, if he is seeming confused, if they don't want to take risk, like somebody said, they don't have the courage to take risk, like somebody else said, then this leader will not be seen as a leader at all. So we need self-confidence. And what is self-confidence? A sound sense of one's self-worth and capability. So you exactly know what are you good at, what are things that you need support at. So you know, and you are okay with that. You understand this fundamental concept that no man or person can be perfect. But I'm confident about the things that I know. And I'm also confident in asking for support in areas I don't know. So self-confidence, and we also talked about last time, yesterday when we talked about a phenomenon known as emotional transference. So if I show confidence, what will I transfer to other people? Emotionally, they will also feel more confident. If I'm not confident, the people around me, especially who are my followers, who are my team members, and I'm the leader, will they feel confident? No, because I'm transferring through an invisible thread the attitude of underconfidence, of poor confidence. And please remember one thing, there is a difference between self-confidence and egoistic self-confidence. So there has to be a balance, right? Self-confidence is balancing everything out. Now, if this is what self-confidence is all about, let's do a little case study as to what do we find in this situation. Is it lack of confidence? Is it overconfidence? Is it appropriate amount of self-confidence? And how did we get to know that the person is wherever the person is? So Madhvi is new in a job at a large accountancy firm. During the first week, she is asked to prepare and deliver a short PowerPoint presentation to a group of potential customers. As Madhvi has never done this before, she becomes very anxious about the task, but feels she cannot ask anyone for help as she wants to create a good impression. Instead, she buys herself a book of PowerPoint and spends long hours after work trying to teach herself how to give an effective presentation using this tool. On the day of the presentation, Madhvi is very nervous. This clearly shows during her talk as she seems unclear and anxious in front of her audience. This is supported by the negative feedback given by the group because she doesn't do a good job about the presentation she was to give. Madhvi goes home feeling like a failure. She has not performed well in her first week of work, and she begins to ask herself if she is really good enough to to work for this company. What do you think Madhvi did wrong? And how does this relate to her level of self-confidence? There's a beautiful saying again of John Maxwell says, sometimes you win, sometimes you
Lose.
learn. You never lose.
Okay.
So a leader's mindset is this. He knows he's trying things out. They know they are taking the risk. And they are certain about two things. Either they will win through it, or more importantly, they will learn through that risk taking of what needs to be done, and they'll make the necessary changes to do it well the next time.
Okay.
So great. I think that's a great insight that you gave. And see, that's what is, there's so many things which are not part of the program. But the moment you say something, that invokes a connection of something which is very, very powerful. So great. Anybody else? Her level of self-confidence, where do you rate it? Very high? No, appropriate? Slightly lesser than what it should be. So very high, appropriate, less. Anybody?
I think in the appropriate level.
Appropriate. If it was appropriate, she did not ask for help. Please remember, here she is trying to show somewhere overconfidence to say, I will do everything myself. I don't need any help. Because she did not ask for help. Now, many a times when people seem overconfident, internally they are underconfident. They are just putting that aura around them because they want to hide their lack of self-confidence, and that is why they are loud. They want to show that they can do a lot of things, but internally they don't feel so good about themselves. So here, what could Madhavi have done to handle this situation better? If she had the appropriate amount of confidence to say, okay, I'm good at this, but I don't know this, I need help. Like yesterday, I asked all of you to do that. I need help, and that is okay, right? To need help to change is okay. There's nothing wrong about it. It doesn't put me down. So what could she have done to do a better job in this situation? What are the alternatives she had? So that expectation setting could have been done. Also possibly asked from others, what is the past experiences of what is the past in which way by which these presentations have been given? Great. Anybody else? What else could else be done? Now she's taken that, but she still doesn't know PowerPoint. Now, how does she overcome that PowerPoint issue? Yes, anybody? Obviously take help, right? So here it is, Madhi problem could stem from low level of self-confidence. People with high level of self-confidence value and accept themselves for who they are and are clearly able to separate this from tasks and activities. This is who I am, this is what I'm good at. There are certain tasks I will have to do which I may not have the expertise to do it. So it is okay to admit it and ask for support. They are also able to readily admit if they can't do something. It is perfectly acceptable that Madhvi does not know how to present and how to use a PowerPoint. Madhvi is Madhvi, and whatever she is and isn't able to do is okay. If she had a high level of self-confidence, she would have happily taken on the task and viewed it as an opportunity to develop some new skills. Admitted that she did not know how to use PowerPoint and asked colleagues with more experience for help. Accepted that in only a week, like somebody learned from it, she was not going to deliver a perfect presentation, but that was okay. Asked for and be more open to constructive feedback from the group. So one failure shouldn't put you down, right? From the group after a presentation, so she could have learned from it, and maybe she could have practiced this along with her own team before she even went there. So self-confidence needs a major area of leadership. And I love this little video that show how a person, even when he is disabled, can still show tremendous amount of self-confidence. Let's just watch this video.
ये वीडियो लंग काट रहा है
पहले मैं गुजरात बड़ौदा शहर से आया हुआ हूँ। हाथों के बल पे ब्रेक डांस, क्लासिकल, वेस्टर्न में सभी प्रकार के डांस कर लेता हूँ। मेरा पूरा कॉस्ट्यूम टोटली चेंज है, पूरा वेस्टर्न कॉस्ट्यूम है। आप मेरा काम देखो, मेरा मेहनत देखो, उसी के हिसाब से अगर मेरे को रिजेक्ट कर दो। अभी मैं जजेस के सामने और भी हटके परफॉर्मेंस देने वाला हूँ।
Next, please.
कमलेश जी, सॉरी,
Okay,
माफी चाहती हूँ, आपके परफॉर्मेंस से पहले मैंने आपको रोक दिया।
नो प्रॉब्लम, थैंक यू।
मैं थोड़ी शब्दों के लिए एक्चुअली, आप डांस करेंगे?
हाँ जी,
राइट?
हाँ जी।
आप यहीं से हैं, अहमदाबाद से?
मैं यहाँ पे गुजरात में बड़ौदा शहर है, बड़ौदा शहर से मैं परफॉर्म के लिए आया हूँ यहाँ पे।
मुझे लगता है हम सबके दिमाग में बहुत सारे सवाल हैं,
लेकिन
रेमो भी कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं, टेरेंस, लेकिन मुझे लगता है रेमो पहले पूछ ले।
कमलेश जी, आपके दिमाग में कब आया कि आप
डांस का तो मेरे को पहले से ही शौक था, लेकिन जब मैं पैरालिसिस हो गया, मैं जब 5 साल का था तब मेरे को पैरालिसिस हो गया था। तब मेरे को इतनी जानकारी नहीं थी कि पैरालिसिस क्या होता है। और जब मेरे को समझ में आया कि पैरालिसिस कितनी बड़ी ट्रेजेडी है, कि एक आदमी है जो पैरालिसिस हो जाए, हैंडीकैप हो जाते हैं, उसके लाइफ में क्या क्या प्रॉब्लम आता है, क्या क्या मुश्किलें आती है, वो तब से मेरे को पता चला।
कमलेश, या मुझे लगता है हम ये डिसीजन अभी हम आपका परफॉर्मेंस देखना चाहते हैं। मैं बहुत ही उत्सुक हूँ कि देखने कि आप क्या कर सकते हैं।
ओके,
सो कैन वी सी अ परफॉर्मेंस?
या,
थैंक यू
सर।
एंड रोल साउंड।
सुनो गौर से दुनिया वालों, बुरी नजर ना हम पे डालो, चाहे जितना जोर लगा लो, सबसे आगे होंगे हिंदुस्तान। सुनो गौर से दुनिया वालों, बुरी नजर ना हम पे डालो, चाहे जितना जोर लगा लो, सबसे आगे होंगे हिंदुस्तान। हमने कहा है तुम भी कहो, हमने कहा है जो तुम भी कहो।
आओ हम मिलजुल के बोले अब तो यारा, अपना जहां है सबसे प्यारा। आओ हम मिलजुल के बोले अब तो यारा, अपना जहां है सबसे प्यारा।
हमने कहा है जो तुम भी कहो। जो वादा करते हैं करके निभाते हैं, हम पीछे हटते नहीं।
जो हमें प्यार दे, हमसे यार प्यार दे, दोस्ती के लिए जिंदगी अपनी वार दे। जो हमें प्यार दे, हमसे यार प्यार दे, दोस्ती के लिए जिंदगी अपनी वार दे।
हमने कहा है जो तुम भी कहो। सुनो गौर से दुनिया वालों, बुरी नजर ना हम पे डालो, चाहे जितना जोर लगा लो, सबसे आगे होंगे हिंदुस्तानी।
कमलेश जी, अब अगर हर हिंदुस्तानी में आप आपका एक छोटा हिस्सा आ जाए तो वाकई में हम हिंदुस्तानी कहलाने के लायक हो जाएंगे। आपका जोश, आपसे अगर प्रेरणा लें कोई भी, मैं तो मीन्स मेरे पैर हिल रहे हैं, क्योंकि मैं दोनों पैरों के साथ वो नहीं कर सकती जो आप कर रहे हैं।
So that's self-confidence for you. Irrespective of the limitations we have, focusing on what our strengths are and accepting ourselves as we are and respecting ourselves. It does not, however, stop you, and that's important to understand, to improve on the areas of development that you need to improve in. But accepting the fact that you and me or anybody else, like any other human being, have got our strengths and some areas we are not good at. So self-confidence for leadership, confidence to ask for support, self-confidence to seek interaction with people and get into discussions. Also having the courage to say, I don't know, let's try to do it together, are major elements that are required in leadership, especially in the 21st century, where none of us individually can find answers to the complex problems that we are facing. With that in mind, let us now see what are some social skills that we require to really be seen as a leader. Now, this was an exercise that was done in a university abroad. 3 people were made to sit in front of the laptop. Each one was told that you are one of these. So one was told you are the person on the left, the second one was told you are the person on the right, and one person was told you are the person with his hand. And they had put functional MRIs, electrodes in the brain. And the idea was to check how does social relationships impact the brain. So while this game was going on, they made a slight change in this game. In this game, one of these participants was excluded. And while this person got excluded, and the measurement of the brain and what was happening in the brain got monitored, they realized that when a person feels socially excluded, socially not understood, socially not cared for, his brain identifies this pain of social inclusion as acutely as physical pain. What it means is that if as a leader, we do not include people and aren't socially competent to give a feeling of inclusion to people as a part of the team, the person will see it as a physical pain and get into a state of social distress. Now, a person with that kind of a pain in the head of social exclusion will never be able to give his best to anybody. So with understanding that social interaction and social inclusion means so much for people, let us see what a leader can do to reduce and eliminate this pain so people feel a part of the team. And more importantly, once they feel a part of the team, they feel more engaged. And when they feel more engaged, they are ready to step out of their comfort zone to do things beyond what they would normally do. So here, relationship rules. Leaders are connectors, not climbers. So there's another workshop of John which says, communicate to connect. So as a leader, we must have behaviors which make people feel a connection with us. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So the single most competency and characteristics that most leaders must have is the ability to work with people. If you cannot work with people, you are never going to be a leader. So leader becomes great not because of their power, because of their ability to empower others. So people quit. I'm sure you would have seen this. People quit. People, not companies. 65% of the people who leave the organization is not because the organization was bad, but because they had bad managers. So for a manager to be able to do better, he needs to build up 3 skills, social skills. The first is the skill of influence. How can I influence people? And in influence, the first thing comes is, how can I make people trust me? The first slide I showed, right? A very large number of people would trust a stranger and not the boss. So trust is a very important facet of influence. Second is developing others. I need to support others to grow. In fact, in the Maxwell, there are 5 levels of leadership. The first level is people follow me because they have to. That is because of my position. That is level 1 leader. Level 2 leader is people follow me because they want to. Right? That is when you have started building trust with the person concerned. Influence. Third, level 3 leader is people follow me because of what I have achieved for the organization. Because they see me as competent in my job. The second was trust. Level 2 is they start trusting me, human to human interaction. But I could have a great human to human interaction with people, but if the person is not competent, I won't trust him. So level 3 leaders also invoke a sense of trust in people because of their competence. And level 4 leadership is people follow you because what you have done for them. How have you grown them? You can reflect back in your life and think of that 1 or 2 people in your life who have truly impacted you, who have really supported you. And you'll find that whoever you remember would be the person who took time and effort to help you grow, to develop you, who believed in you more than you believed in yourself at that point in time. So developing others is believing that everybody has a potential beyond his own of what he's showing at that point in time, and then giving him feedback and guidance to get better. And the third is teamwork and collaboration, working in a collaborative way and building the team. And this normally happens when the team members are exceptionally good professionals. They have a very high level of competence. When people are good under you, right? I'm good in my job, you are good in your job. The one thing that comes in between this team not achieving its result is my ego versus your ego. So a leader must ensure that these egos are kept down and everybody starts working for the common good, and cooperate and team building is something that leaders must be working on. So these 3 social skills are critical skills that leaders must demonstrate. Let's talk about influence now. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Titles don't have much value when it comes to leading. True leadership cannot be awarded, appointed, or assigned. It comes only from influence, and that cannot be mandated. It must be earned. So you cannot be born into a family, or you can't be born into a leadership role. Now coming to influence, the foundation of influence is being seen as trustworthy. If I don't see you as credible, you can't influence me. So the first step is I have to ensure that people see me as credible. That's the law of solid ground, right? Trustworthiness is the foundation of influence. Now, what is trust? Most of us see it as a very fuzzy concept. You trust some people, you don't trust some others. Why does it happen? What does it doesn't know. So let's try to put some specificities to trust, and mainly from the context of, if I want people to see me as trustworthy, if I want people to see me as credible, if I want people to trust me as a person, as a leader, what is it that I need to do? So there are 2 elements of this. The first is character, the second is competence. Firstly, people must see my character as a character of a person who can lead them. So my character has to be flawless. People must like me for who I am. You can write this down. This is another beautiful phrase, 2 words I learned from John. And he talks about being a likable expert. You must become a likable expert. Expert comes from our competence, but our likability factor comes from our character. Sometimes it happens when we become too competent, we also become egoistic and arrogant. So the likability part of it is not there. So character and competence are 2 elements we must continuously work on ourselves. And to understand character better, let me just put a situation in front of you. Let's say I'm your best friend, I missed your birthday. So you had a birthday 5 days back. I met you, but I didn't wish you. However, after 5 days, I come to you, I shake your hand and say, hey, yaar, you are my best friend. Sorry, I missed your birthday, but never mind. Here's a small present I've got for you, and I walk away. Now, how many of you will like this behavior? So again, in a class, when I say, how many of you will like this? We have so few hands up. I say, how many of you say it doesn't really matter? It's too small a thing. So again, a few hands get up. And I said, how many of you will not like it? Because damn it, he's your best friend, yeah? Again, a few hands go up. And now I ask this question to you. If I do an action, and the action can be seen as a positive or negative or neutral by different people at different times, I have a big problem. Because I am acting in the same way, but some people don't like it, some like it, and some love it. Now, if this is what my life is all about, I don't know when the most important people may not like my action while I thought it was okay. So what do you do that this dichotomy of people maybe liking it or maybe not liking it is broken down once and for all? Let me now do the same action again. So you are my best friend. I missed your birthday 5 days back. I forgot to say happy birthday to you. After 5 days, I walk up to you and say, hey, yaar, Ram, I just want to tell you I'm so sorry. Yaar. How stupid of me forgetting your birthday, and you are my best friend. Yeah, I'm so extremely sorry for it. But really, yaar, that day I was in some kind of a problem. My mother was not well, and that's why I forgot about it. I know it's not an excuse, but I'm really sorry about it. And just to tell you how sorry I am, here's a little birthday present for you. And I promise you, I will never ever forget your birthday. So best of luck, my friend, and I love you so much. Now, how many of you say you won't like this? How many of you say it doesn't matter? Most of us will say, yes, I liked it, right? So the reason why at times when you act the act, people don't like it is because you can write this sentence down. It's a very, very important sentence. You judge yourself by your intent, but people judge you by your behavior. And at times your intent, if not expressed, your motive, if not expressed, is misunderstood by people. So the first element of character is motive. You must give your motive out. And I'm assuming the motive is good, the intent is good. If you think that it can be misunderstood by people, don't assume they will understand your motive. It is for me and you to ensure that we express the reason why we are doing what we are doing when there is a chance of it being misunderstood. So the most important thing about character is motive. And one more thing happens is when I'm thinking about my motive on a behavior at times, because we are human beings, right? Our motive at times may not be honorable. I may be doing something to put down somebody else. When I ask myself, is my motive good? And the answer I get is no. It will prevent me to do something which harms somebody else. So 2 things about it. It ensures I check my motive for an action I'm about to do before I do it. Secondly, when I do it, I put it into words and tell people why I've done it. So the first thing about character is motive. The next is, and we can do this little exercise with me. So all of you, what we are going to do is, you all sitting in your table, just keep your hands free. What we will do is, we'll clap our hand 3 times. We are going to hit the table 3 times. We are going to clap our hand twice, hit the table twice, clap once, hit the table once. Can you all see me? Am I visible to you? Because I can't see myself. Can everybody?
No, sir, we are able to see you.
You can see me, okay. So just watch me. I've just told you what to do. 3 times clap, 3 times on the table, twice clap, twice on the table, once clap, once on the table. Now watch me and let's do it together. Okay, let's go.
Leadership, man.
What am I doing? I told
Sir,
you
you are just
something else.
clapping, sir.
I'm just clapping, right? Okay, let's do it together now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. Which one
Yes,
which one of this went better? The first one or second one?
Both were better, sir.
The first one, I told you something else. So when what I say and what I do is different, the result is confusion. So, right? But when I say and what I do is the same, the result is clarity. So modeling is another part of character. As a leader, I must model what I say. I must walk my talk. I can't be saying something else, but people see, you must come on time, and I come late every day. Please remember, people will follow you not by what you say, but what you do. So under character, there are 2 elements, motive and modeling. Ask yourself, is your motive right? Express that motive, and after you have expressed the motive, follow up by doing the behavior also that is connected to what you said. So 2 parts of character, motive and modeling. Now let us see competence. I'm sorry to tell all of you, all of us are 80 years old. We have been told that we have some clog in the heart and we need to have a operation. You have to choose one of these 2 surgeons to do your heart operation. Whom will you choose? Whom out of this will you choose? Just for ease of identification, we'll say the black one and the white one without it being racist, right? It's only for identification. You want the black doctor or the white doctor?
Whichever is good, sir. Expert.
Okay. So what you are telling me is, I can't make out by seeing the photograph, Pawan. You have to tell me something more about him. It's my life. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me give you. Both of them have done their masters, MD in heart from the All India Institute of Medical Science. Both of them. Whom would you like to go for?
Sir, I need experience also, sir.
So you say educational qualification is not good enough. I want to know his experience. So the white person is doing his first operation, and the person in the black has done 100 operations, 99% right.
Then black, sir.
And the black, right? So competence has got 2 parts, skills and capability and results. So if you want to be seen as competent, you need to have qualifications, you need to have skills, but to back up the skills and qualification, you must be getting results. You must be demonstrating results. Right? Like in this case. So all of us, to be seen as trustworthy, we need to keep working on our character. We need to work on our competence. We need to ensure express openly whatever we are saying, the reason behind it. We also are modeling whatever we are saying, walking the talk. We need to build our skills and capability, and we need to deliver results. Only when we are showing all these 4 elements, people will trust us. So give yourself a competence audit. List down 3 competencies that are required in your current role and 2 core competencies required for your next level growth. So write this down for your own self, 3 competencies that you require in today's role. And if you want to go to the next level, what are 2 additional competencies that you require? Then give yourself a mark against 1 to 10, 1 being minimum, 10 being maximum, against each one of them, so that you identify the competencies that you need to work on and start working on it and learning on a daily basis. So we all need to be continuously improving. And I'm coming back to what I told you yesterday. For those who were not here, I told all of us to write down before we sleep 3 things that I've achieved today, 3 things that I've learned today, and 3 things that I should be grateful for. So if you keep continuously, incrementally keep growing day by day, your competence will always keep growing, and you and me will always be seen as a person who people can trust. Now let's go to developing others. It's also known as the law of addition, bolstering others' abilities through feedback and guidance. Leaders add to others value by serving them. So we should see our life as a life of service. Like I gave out this sentence, again I'll give it out. What is life worth living? Write this down. What is life worth living? If not to make other people's life easier to live. So my job and your job, or any human being job, is to make lives of others easier to live by adding value to them. So the bottom line in leadership isn't how far we advance ourselves, but how far do we advance others? Now in this, one question comes to me, Pawan, if I advance others and he overtakes me or she overtakes me, then what will happen to me? So the idea is simple. Whatever job that you are doing today, please remember, at least 40% of the job that you are doing today in your present role needs to be done by people below you, and you shouldn't be doing that. So when you delegate this job to people under you to grow them, what is your idea? Idea is to free up your time. Why? Because then you start doing job that will take you to the next level. So while you are giving that 40% job, which is mundane job, that you are anyway good at, to other people to do, you are freeing out time for yourself to work on those elements of the job which you want to get better at. What's really going to happen here is, a lot of us don't give the job that we are good at. But once I'm good at it, right, and it's a mundane job, I shouldn't be doing it any longer. And I should use that time to grow myself further. So while you are improving by 40%, what are you doing with the time that you have? You are improving yourself further. So that chance is never going to come that this person is going to get better to you. Because if you are giving him the job that you are doing just to be free and do nothing, then you're going to get into the situation that you're worrying about. So law of addition is the next thing that we need to do. Leaders often don't take this seriously, and hence it is often a very common development lead for leaders. And law of significance is cooperation. One is too small a number to achieve significance. Individually, we can achieve only that much and no more. And there's a mind shift, change that every leader must have. And many times we don't have that. And that is, when you become a leader, you must believe in this sentence that I'm going to talk about. That henceforth, I will live in the reflected glory of my team. I'm responsible for my team doing well. And if my team does well, it automatically makes me a better leader. So don't get into that short-sighted game of ensuring that everything you do yourself and your team does not do it. Because a team can achieve much more than what an individual can do. So with these broad social skills, let's finally go to one little video about how do we really learn. It's on brain science. I thought it would be relevant for us as leaders.
As for every single one of us, learning something new means rearranging the way her brain works. brain has an astonishing 100 billion neurons, or brain cells, all connected together. Learning is about creating and strengthening pathways through these neurons for impulses of electricity. But between each and every connection in our brains, there's a tiny gap called a synapse. For any of us to learn something new, the electrical signal has to jump across this gap to continue its journey. The gap between the two brain cells is tiny, but that doesn't mean it's straightforward for a signal to get from one side to the other. For us, it's like crossing a deep ravine. And getting from one side to the other should tell us something about the way we learn. The first time a signal crosses from one brain cell to the other demands the most effort, and it's the same when we cross our ravine. The first trip across is the hardest. Having crossed the ravine once, the journeys across get easier and easier. And a similar thing happens when we learn something. To start with, learning is difficult. But as the signal crosses the gap between the brain cells again and again, we establish a more solid pathway.
Sorry about that.
By the time we've made the crossing over and over again, it becomes effortless. We can do it whenever we like. We finally learned something.
Okay, great. So this is what we have learned in the last 2 hours. What is leadership? Has its definition changed? A few insights that we got is leadership of the past, where you tell others what to do and you're always in a telling mode, is not going to work any longer. Today it's a more collective leadership where there's going to be more interaction between people and you're going to have more ideas taken from people before you take a decision. Also, we learned about the 3 myths of leadership. The first was the management myth, then the knowledge myth, and the title myth. We also understood attitude, especially the attitude of self-confidence, is something which every leader must demonstrate. And we also learned an important facet is whatever our attitude is that leads us to do a behavior which gets us a result, which further strengthens our original attitude. And then we talked about the 3 critical leadership social skills. And this was also influence, developing others, and teamwork and collaboration. So any questions anybody has, I'd love to take them on. And hope this is being faced by a lot of people where you are younger and your team member is older. Now, there are only 2 ways to handle this. First is mutual respect. And when I give a job to somebody who's elder to me, not senior, elder to me, I must make the person feel respected to say, sir, this is something that you are so good at that nobody else can do it. I really need your help. And I want to give you complete authority over it to do this because only you can do it. So you have to kind of, and you're not doing it just to impress him. You truly believe in it, right? And then give the person complete responsibility responsibility for this, because these older people truly are wanting respect and nothing more and nothing less. So you have to kind of just play it that way. And I'm not saying it will 100% work. Some people are in the mindset they will do nothing, right? And my answer to that is, and I know it may not be so easy, it may not be within your hands, but if somebody is truly that bad apple in a team, the bad apple needs to be moved out, because that one bad apple is going to spoil the other people also. So in my view, just kind of be respectful to him and see that he has the expertise for it. Tell him he's the only person and you need his help, and then give it to him independently to be responsible for. Also, these people, make them also mentor others to say, sir, with your experience, can you mentor so and so to and so and so? So they need to be made or need to feel a part of your team, and that you respect the experience that, right? So that's the only thing that I could say. But yes, I'm certain that may not work every time, but this is likely to increase the possibility of your success with that person.
Thank you so much, sir.
Great question. Yeah. Anybody else?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sir, how the knowledge of psychology and philosophy is going to help leaders?
So I don't think you need to work too hard, from an academic point of view. But from a functional point of view, attending workshops on leadership, automatically they will be bringing that elements of things. So if you really understand psychology and neuroscience, both, you will certainly be a better leader, because you now understand why a person is behaving the way he is. So there's no doubt it will help you big time, right? Because you really understand if somebody is feeling, so it will help. Now yesterday we did the emotional brain and the thinking brain, and how there's a seesaw relationship to them. How when your emotions are high, your rational thinking stops. So you know that when somebody is feeling bad, that time don't have a conversation with him and say, okay, you seem to be angry right now. Why don't we talk with each other after 2 hours? I'll come to your cabin and we'll have a cup of tea. So you are understanding how the brain is working,
Yes.
what's the psychology of it, and it will help you. Certainly it will help you, no doubt about it. But as I said, it should be more functional skills that you must understand from a functional point of view rather than an academic point of view. But it will certainly help. I agree completely with you. I've just taken a course myself on mindfulness, right? So I keep also upgrading myself by learning more and more of this.
Yes, sir. Sir, one more. You said to be realistic and don't act as overconfident or like that. But sometimes it will help we act as if you're confident. That will help people instead of being original.
So it is known as fake it to make it.
Yeah.
At times
exactly.
you need to fake it to make it.
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
always believe it. Why don't we make it so that we don't have to fake it?
But we don't have it, only then we fake it.
Absolutely. So to fake it is a very fast way of getting growth also, right? If I fake it, I show openness, I show that I'm confident, I'm smiling, right? It does invoke feeling of confidence in others, and there's nothing wrong about it. But as I said, everything has to be for that situation that is concerned, right? So don't be too overconfident, because if you're too overconfident in everything, then people will see through you that this person is unnecessarily confident. Everything is going wrong, but he's still confident, right? But you're right. Fake it to make it is contextual. Everything is contextual, and that is a methodology that needs to be used at certain points in time, right? Like if you're going for a presentation, go to a bathroom, stand in front of your mirror, and say, "Wow, man, I'm too good. I can do it." It certainly gives you the confidence that are required, the positive confidence that are required to make you feel good. It works. Thank you. I think that's a very good
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Computation
Sorry?
among a team is healthy, sir. Competition among a team is healthy.
So I believe, see, our challenge is today what? Our challenge is that we are measuring every individual based on his personal KRA KPI. Now, when you do that, you're creating a healthy competition, so to say. But at the end of it, there'll be only 1 or 2 winners, right? So our appraisal system needs to be slightly changed, where the team goals must have at least 50% of the appraisal marks rather than only individual goals. So while 50% of individual goals to bring in that competitive spirit is required, to bring in the collaborative spirit, you need to have team goals, and everybody's appraisal must be dependent at least 50% on those team goals achievement. Because today what is happening, out of 10 people, you can only give 2 excellent marks in the appraisal. So while you have excited 2 people and made them satisfied, you have diminished at least 6 of others who also deserve the same. But because you couldn't give it, you chose this. So again, I think there's a balance between individual vis-a-vis team. And if you can have your team goals and everybody knows 50% of his or her appraisal, and based on that, so collaboration along with competition will come. So again, you have to balance that out. Okay, great. So thank you so much for this fantastic time that I had with you, and great learnings we all had. The only thing that I like to emphasize at the end of it, as leaders, more and more that you can involve people in the planning stage and the discussion stage, the more excited they will be to work when they get into the execution stage. So involve them. The more they get involved, the better results you will get. And as a leader, we must believe now in collective leadership rather than individual leadership, which is more individual in nature. With that, I thank all of you and hope to meet you soon at some point in time. And thank you so much. Have a great day, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.